everyone, this is Diana, the Wandering Sewist, and today my video is the This or That Sewing Challenge. This is a challenge that was started by Julie from the Curated Curvy, and I was tagged by Tiffany from Hoosier Handmade. So thank you to Julie for starting this challenge, and thank you to Tiffany for thinking of me and tagging me in the This or That Sewing Challenge. Okay, so let's get right into it. There's a lot of questions. So topic one is sewing prep. I'm looking over here at my laptop. That's why I keep looking over here. So topic one is sewing prep. Sewing prep. First question, shopping new or stash busting? I'm a shopping new person. I tend to go shopping for my projects. I don't have a large fabric stash. Before I left South Africa a couple months ago, I did do a couple of really big fabric hauls so I could stock up on some fabric to get me started here in Prague. I still don't have a lot of fabric, but I do have enough for right now. So right now I'm stash busting, but in a couple months, I'll run out and I'll need to go shop new. Yay! Also about shopping new, since I don't live in the United States most of the time, I live in different countries around the world. It's really fun to visit fabric shops in all the different countries because there's different fabrics available, different prints, different styles, different color combinations, pattern combinations that you wouldn't think of because every country has its unique culture. So I find shopping in a physical fabric shop to be very satisfying, and versus online versus stash busting. So the next question for sewing prep is PDF versus paper patterns. So as I said, I don't live in the United States most of the time. So whenever I buy a pattern, I usually have to order online and then pay shipping, because I can't just run down to my Joann's Simplicity sale and get a pattern for $1.99. So I tend to shop PDF patterns, and then I have them printed the A0 size, which is the giant poster size, so that I can then have a printed pattern in my sewing room. So yes, I shop PDF patterns. I do have a few paper patterns that every once in a while Something Delightful has a $4.99 or $5 sale, and I will buy a few patterns from Something Delightful. The next question is cutting versus tracing. I am a tracing girl. I tend to trace my patterns out because my personal sizes change a lot. I have a thyroid condition, so I go up and down in sizes regularly. I don't stay the same size very long, so I need to have the availability to have multiple sizes of the same garment. So I trace. I'm a tracing girl. The next one is a muslin or just go for it. Muslin or go for it. I'm a go for it person. Or alternatively, you could say that everything I make is a wearable muslin. It's because it's always my first try, but I feel so precious about the hard work I put into it and about the fabric that I bought that I can't bear to throw it out, give it away, or take it apart and redo it. So I tend to just go for it and then wear whatever I made and just make it work for me. But then if I choose to make that pattern again, I know what went wrong the first time, and then I fix it for the second time. Okay, now we're going to move on to topic two. And topic two has 4 questions. Fabrics. This topic 2 is fabrics. First one, in-store or online shopping? I mentioned previously that I prefer to shop in the store because I live all over the world in different countries. I visit different countries regularly, and it's really fun to go and visit their fabric shops and get unique, different fabrics and textures and colors and combinations that would be unique to that specific culture. That's really fun for me. You know, fabric collecting is a different hobby than sewing. On the other hand, if I'm trying to make something specific and I cannot get the fabric locally for that specific project, that I will buy that one thing online that I need. Knits versus wovens. I love sewing with wovens. I find it easier to sew with wovens. However, knits are more comfortable to wear. I'm a little bit intimidated by knits. I have sewn with several knits. I am getting better. I would not consider myself an expert by any means. This winter, I have several knits, beautiful sweater knits that I found that I'm going to try to make some really beautiful tops, maybe a sweater dress of some kind. We'll see how that goes. I have some ideas and I will be sharing those with you when we get closer to the colder weather. Tumble dry or hang to dry. Okay, so I have a very busy life. I have a lot of kids. I have 3 kids here at home with me. I have 2 adult children and a granddaughter in the United States. I live overseas, and it just seems like when you live outside of the United States, it takes twice as long to get anything done. So life is very busy. I don't have time to hang my stuff to dry. So I prefer to tumble dry. I definitely pre-wash all of my fabrics and tumble them dry. I pre-wash them in the same temperature that I would wash the garment. So if it's, most of the time it's cold, so I would wash it in cold and then tumble dry. And the last question for topic 2 fabrics is rotary cutter versus scissors. Okay, so I started my sewing life as a quilter many long years ago, and I love my rotary cutter. I especially love it for large pieces like the big skirts or long seams like for pants, things like that. Rotary cutters are amazing. I recently sewed some baby clothes and I found that cutting out those little tiny little pieces with a rotary cutter was very difficult. So I went and bought one of those little tiny rotary cutters, and I think it's 1 centimeter radius. It's 10 millimeters, and it helped, but I still needed to get into the tiniest spaces with a pair of scissors. So when I'm cutting out, I always have my rotary cutter in my mat, plus a pair of scissors, just in case. Okay, topic 3 is clothing construction. Now there are 8 questions in clothing construction, so I'm going to try to speed through this one as quickly as I can. Clothing construction. Follow a pattern or wing it. I'm a rule follower. Not only do I follow the pattern step by step exactly, but I read the pattern all the way through from beginning to end before I even start construction. I do not start until I have read everything, and then I follow everything step by step. So I'm a follow the pattern girl. The next question is bias tape versus facing. Okay, so I'm of 2 minds about this. I love the way bias tape looks, and I love wearing things with bias tape. However, I find facings easier to sew, especially on knits. So I need more practice with sewing on bias tape because I tend to get those little wrinkles in there, which probably means that I'm pulling it or stretching it too much. I want to get better at bias tapes, but I find facings much easier. The thing about facings when you're wearing them is sometimes, like if you have a facing right here, it'll pop out and you have to stuff your facing back in because you can't always sew down your facings. Sometimes you have to leave them loose and you just tack them at the corner and that's it. At the shoulder seam. So I like sewing facings, but I prefer the way that bias tape looks. Okay, the next one is serging or French seams. Now, I've done both. I'm I always tell myself I'm going to do French seams on a project, and then I sew a seam, and then I remember I sewed wrong sides. I sewed right sides together, and now in order to sew a French seam, I would have to go back and take that seam out, and then I just move on and serge. I always want to do a French seam, but I never remember to do a French seam. It's the same thing with me with notches. When I'm cutting a fabric, I tell myself I want to cut my notches outwards instead of having to put a little notch in to the seam allowance. I always tell myself this time I'm going to cut it out, and then I cut out my fabric, and then I remember later on, I wanted to cut my notches out, and now I can't. I have to go back and snip all of my notches in. So it's one of those things. I want to do French seams because I follow Sean from Kittenish Behavior, and I love the way the inside of her garments look. They're always so neat and beautiful, and it's very important to her that the insides of her garment are just as beautiful as the outsides. And I want to be that way. I aspire to that, but I never remember. I get excited about what I'm doing, and then I forget. So I want to do French seams, but I never remember. So I serge my seams most of the time. Okay, the next question is button or zip fly. I've never sewn a button fly. I have sewn one zip fly in my life, and that was in a classroom with the teacher guiding me through step by step. I don't think I could do it on my own just by reading instructions. I think I would probably have to follow along with a video tutorial. So I would like to do that again because I would like to make a pair of like jeans or really nice slacks, dress pants, something a little more dressed up. So I want to do a zip fly. The next question is sewing buttons by hand or machine. I sew my buttons by hand because I'm afraid of sewing them on the machine. I'm afraid of missing the holes and breaking a needle and messing up my machine or something. So I tend to sew on my buttons by hand. Okay, the next question is fusible or sew-in interfacing. Okay, that depends on the weight of the interfacing. For light to medium weight interfacing, I like to use fusible. For heavy weight interfacing, for making wallets or handbags, I will use a sew-in interfacing, especially if it's foam, like the by Annie Soft and Stable or the Bosel In Our Foam. I tend to use sew-in foams because when you do the fusible foam and then you're birthing your bag, it can come a little bit loose from the fusing while you're pulling on it. And then you have to try and iron it back smooth again, and you get little bubbles. So I don't like the bubble look. It's frustrating for me. So I prefer sew-in interfacing if it's thick or heavy. And then if it's medium to lightweight, I like fusible. Okay, the next one is snip as you go or all at once. Oh, I have to snip as I go. If I don't snip as I go, I will not snip at all. I never go back and snip later on. So I have to snip as I go. It's a discipline I do. The last one in this topic is press as you go or all at once. I press as I go because I find that my finished product is much neater, and sewing in seams and sewing over seams and seam allowances that have been pressed makes the next seam that I need to do much neater as well. Okay, the topic 4, which is the final topic for this or that, the sewing edition, is sewing habits. All right, so late night or daytime sewing. I am a daytime sewer. I find my evenings to be very full with kid homework and dinner and dishes and tidying up, and then getting kids ready for school the next day, getting lunches made. So I find my evenings to be very hurry, busy. And I don't really have a lot of time in the evenings. And then by the time all the kids are in bed and the house is quiet, I'm exhausted. And I have tried exhausted sewing before and it did not go well. So I do not sew if I am tired. That's one of my rules. So I do not like to sew at night because I get tired. Okay, the next one is slow and steady or frantic. Okay. So this is something I've discovered about myself recently. If I try to do frantic sewing and I'm in a hurry to get a project done because I've imposed a deadline on myself or I need to be somewhere, I make mistakes. I make way more mistakes when I'm frantic sewing than if I'm just going slow and steady and I take my time and I finish it when I finish it. So I prefer slow and steady. I don't want to do frantic sewing because of all the mistakes, and it winds up taking just as the same amount of time as it would have taken if I had gone slow and steady. So I'm a slow and steady girl. Okay, the last question for this or that, the sewing challenge is tidy as you go or one big cleaning session at the end. Okay, that depends on where I am. Right now, I have to be at my dining room table because I don't have my furniture. My personal sewing furniture hasn't been delivered yet from Africa. So I have to right now tidy as I go because I just have one little end of the dining room table. So, and then I have my little sewing box and that's pretty much it. So I have to put things away and tidy as I go. Now, when I have a sewing room or studio, I tend to be a one big cleaning session at the end because I get focused. I get laser focused on my project and I don't want to stop. And so I just continue until it's all finished. And then I will clean everything up at the end. And the nice thing about having your own space is you can close the door and you don't have to look at it when you're busy doing other things. Okay, so that is this or that, the sewing edition. So I hope I find someone to tag. If I do, I will tag them here. I'll put their names here, right here. And if I don't find someone that hasn't already been tagged, if you would like to go ahead and participate in this or that, the sewing edition, please just go to the Curated Curvy. I'll put her link down below to her channel and to her blog so that you can make her this or that sewing edition. All right, bye.